You've met this person. They walk into the room and immediately have all the answers. They've read one article, watched 2 YouTube videos, and suddenly they're an expert. They talk the loudest, they interrupt the most, and they never seem to doubt themselves for even a single second. And the most frustrating part? They're almost always wrong. But here's the really unsettling question. What if that person has been you? What if right now, in some area of your life, you are completely wrong, and you have absolutely no idea? This isn't an insult. This is actually a well-documented glitch in how every human brain works. And scientists have a name for it, the Dunning-Kruger Effect. To understand where this idea comes from, we need a story. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler robbed 2 banks in broad daylight. No mask. He smiled directly at security cameras. When police showed him the footage later that night, he was genuinely shocked. He had covered his face in lemon juice, convinced it would make him invisible on camera. His logic wasn't random. He knew lemon juice could be used as invisible ink. So in his mind, it made perfect sense. The problem wasn't that he was evil. The problem was that he was completely confident in something he fundamentally didn't understand, and he had no idea that he didn't understand it. A psychologist named David Dunning read about Wheeler's case and found it fascinating. Not because it was funny, but because of the question it raised. How can someone be so wrong and so completely unaware of it? He brought in his graduate student Justin Kruger, and together they set out to find an answer. In 1999, they ran a series of experiments. They tested college students on logical reasoning, grammar, and humor. Then they asked each student to estimate how well they had done compared to everyone else. What came back changed how psychologists think about human self-awareness. The results were striking. Students who scored in the bottom 25% on the actual tests estimated themselves to be in the 62nd percentile. They thought they were above average. The worse they actually performed, the more they overestimated themselves. The less they knew, the more confident they were. But something equally interesting happened at the other end. Students who scored in the top 25% actually underestimated how well they had done. They assumed everyone else was probably about as good as them. The most competent people in the room were the least sure of themselves. Dunning and Kruger published their findings under a title that became famous, Unskilled and Unaware of It. Their conclusion: the skills you need to produce a correct answer are almost identical to the skills you need to recognize that an answer is correct. If you lack the skill, you lack both. Think of it as a curve. When you know absolutely nothing about a topic, your confidence is low. But the moment you learn just a little, your confidence shoots up dramatically. You feel like you finally get it. This peak has a nickname, Mount Stupid. Mount Stupid is a dangerous place to be. You know just enough to feel like an expert. You have opinions. You share them freely. You might even argue with people who know far more than you. And you can't see the problem because you don't know what you're missing. As you continue learning, something uncomfortable happens. You start discovering how deep the subject actually goes. You realize your answers were incomplete, or just wrong. Confidence drops. This is called the Valley of Despair, and many people give up here, just when real learning is beginning. If you push through the valley, something remarkable starts to happen. You begin to build a more accurate picture of the world. Confidence slowly returns, but this time, it's built on real understanding. You know what you know, and you know what you don't. This is the slope of enlightenment. Eventually, you reach what researchers call the plateau of sustainability. You're genuinely knowledgeable. You're confident, but with humility. You know the edges of your expertise. You know when to say, I don't know. And that's a sign of real mastery, not weakness. The curve has 4 stages, and we're all somewhere on it, probably on multiple curves at once, for different subjects. The question worth sitting with is, which stage are you actually in right now, for the things you feel most confident about? So why does this happen? The answer comes down to metacognition, your ability to think about your own thinking, to evaluate your own performance, to know how much you know. And here's the problem: metacognition requires the same knowledge base as the subject itself. This is what Dunning called the double burden. If you don't know how to play chess, you can't evaluate your own chess game. If you don't understand grammar, you can't spot your own errors. You don't just lack the skill, you also lack the ability to see that you lack it. The brain fills in these gaps automatically. When you don't know something, your brain doesn't leave a blank space. It generates a placeholder, an assumption that feels like knowledge. This was a survival feature for our ancestors, but in a complex modern world, it regularly misfires. Confirmation bias makes everything worse. Once your brain has formed a confident view, it automatically filters incoming information. Evidence that supports your view gets noticed. Evidence that contradicts it gets ignored or rationalized away. You're not lying. You genuinely don't see the contradictions. And in the age of the internet, this problem has been supercharged. A 10-minute video, a few posts online, one strongly worded article, and suddenly, people feel equipped to debate climate scientists and surgeons. Information is more accessible than ever. But access isn't the same as understanding. Now let's talk about the other end of the curve. Because the Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't just make inexperienced people overconfident. It also has a mirror effect. People who genuinely know a great deal, real experts, highly skilled professionals, often dramatically underestimate their own ability. This is sometimes called impostor syndrome. The persistent feeling that you don't really deserve your success, that you're a fraud, that at some point, people will figure out you don't actually know what you're doing. And the cruel irony is, the more you actually know, the more aware you are of everything you still don't. Experts make a specific cognitive mistake. They assume that if something feels obvious to them, it must be obvious to everyone. They forget what it felt like to not know. So they underestimate how rare their knowledge actually is, and how much they've earned the right to be confident. Maya Angelou, one of the most celebrated writers in American history, said she always feared someone would tap her on the shoulder and say, "We found you out." Neil Armstrong reportedly felt he didn't deserve the attention he received. Even Einstein worried his work wasn't good enough. This pattern repeats across history's greatest minds. The pattern is consistent. People most worth listening to are often the most reluctant to speak, and those most confident in sharing their views often haven't thought about it much at all. Knowing this doesn't mean you should always trust the quiet ones, but it's worth paying close attention to. You see the Dunning-Kruger effect everywhere once you know what to look for. Social media comment sections are a masterclass in it. Someone watches a 12-minute documentary and suddenly feels equipped to challenge decades of scientific research. Not out of malice, out of genuine, sincere confidence in their new partial understanding. In the workplace, it often shows up on the first day. The new hire who immediately has suggestions for how everything should be done differently. Not because they're arrogant, but because they don't yet have the context to understand why things are the way they are. The job always looks simpler from the outside. In relationships, it shows up as advice. Someone who's never been through a difficult divorce confidently tells their friend exactly what they should do. Someone who's never raised children explains the right way to parent. The advice might sometimes be correct, but the confidence in it is rarely earned by experience. And perhaps, most consequentially, it shows up in how we make decisions about our own lives. We overestimate our driving ability. We underestimate financial risk. We think we know our own biases, while those very biases are invisibly shaping what we see. The blind spots, by definition, cannot be seen. Here's a useful test. Think about something you feel very confident about. Now ask, how many hours have I actually spent studying this? How many times have I been wrong about it before? Real confidence is traceable. You can point to exactly where it came from. So how do you actually protect yourself from this? The first step is simply to accept that you are not exempt. The research shows that smarter people are not significantly better at avoiding the Dunning-Kruger effect. Intelligence alone doesn't protect you. Awareness does, but only partially. One of the most effective things you can do is actively seek out people who disagree with you, not to argue, but to learn. Find someone who has spent years on the thing you feel confident about. Ask them questions. Listen to how complex their answers are. That complexity is the real map of the subject. Study more. It sounds obvious, but here's the counterintuitive part. The more you study something, the less confident you tend to feel, at first. Because you're entering the valley of despair. That uncomfortable feeling of, I know less than I thought, isn't failure. It's a sign that real learning is working. Develop the habit of asking more questions and making fewer statements. Notice when you're about to share a strong opinion, and pause to ask, how do I actually know this? Where did this confidence come from? Is it based on evidence? Or does it just feel true? Learn to love being wrong. Every time someone corrects you, you're getting a free education. The people who improve fastest in any field are not the ones who are always right. They're the ones who are genuinely curious when they're wrong. They treat mistakes as data, not threats. There's a concept in Zen Buddhism called Shoshin, the beginner's mind. The idea that when you approach something with the openness of a child seeing it for the first time, you're actually in your most powerful learning state. The expert who still sees themselves as a student is the one who never stops growing. Socrates, considered one of the wisest people in ancient history, gave an answer that has echoed for 2,000 years when asked why. He said, "I know that I know nothing." He wasn't being falsely modest. He was describing the only honest position available to a genuinely curious mind. The goal isn't to stop being confident. Confidence is valuable. It helps you act, create, and lead. The goal is to earn your confidence, to build it on real knowledge, real experience, and real awareness of your own limits. That kind of confidence is rare, and it's the only kind truly worth having. The next time you feel absolutely certain about something, let that certainty be a prompt, not a conclusion. Ask yourself, am I standing on Mount Stupid right now, or have I genuinely done the work to be here? The willingness to ask that question is already more than most people ever manage. If this video made you think about something differently, or made you a little less certain about something you were previously confident in, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Subscribe for more videos like this. Stay curious, stay humble, and keep learning.